They say technology makes our lives easier. For work, to learn, to travel, to communicate. But there are things that machines cannot yet do. Things as important as engaging, putting themselves in your shoes, having intuition, or making intelligent decisions. In an increasingly technological world, we need professionals who provide intelligent solutions based on their know-how. Because there are things that technology cannot yet do for you. The human tech.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today on the 18th of September, 5:30 Madrid time. Today, we're going to introduce you here in the panel. We have at the moment two speakers. We have Pedro Heredia, international lawyer. Hello, Pedro.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone.
Then we have the privilege to have from Madrid, Daniel from Revicasa. Hello, hello, Daniel.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ignacio, for having me here.
And then we have, and the connection is going through with Michael Davis from Almeria and Marbella. I don't know if you can listen still yet. Hello, Michael. He's just trying to connect. Okay. And Daniel is contacting us today from Madrid. He's the CEO of Surveyors of Revicasa, who does all the inspections in the properties before you buy the property. He will explain us all about. And I don't know if Mr. Davis is already there, ready to talk. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Ignacio. Good afternoon. I almost didn't make it.
That's very good. Thank you for joining us. I know it takes time for all of us to organize these meetings, and it is quite difficult. I understand. Now, today, I put on the panel here, we're going to talk about buying a property in Spain. Pedro, Michael, you guys are very professionals already, more than 25 years working on conveyancing, and you will tell us a little bit about what you do on the due diligence, the legal tips for you to take into consideration before investing. And then Pedro and myself, we could talk about a little bit about the new decree in Valencian. Michael could say that his opinion on Andalusia about the touristic license as well. And then different type of rental contract we could talk, and taxation. Live questions and answer. And Danielle will tell us as surveyor, what do they do nationally in the whole of Spain for clients who are through the conveyancing and trying to find an independent surveyor who will check every single thing they are really interested, or what kind of things Danielle offers to clients, and if clients wants to add something else, whether that's possible. I'm going to pass over to Pedro and Michael to talk about conveyancing, and then we'll talk about the rest of it with Danielle. Now, Pedro, would you like to start talking a bit about legal things to bear in mind when buying for an investor, and briefly the decree on the Valencia, and then we'll jump into Michael's in Andalusia. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Ignacio. We've been speaking about investments in Spain, about buying properties in many webinars. I will be brief and summarize really what we understand is the steps to go through. And I will be focusing probably a little bit more in the new decree in Comunidad Valenciana, in Valencia region, about this properties that has to apply for license for in order to advert the properties into the touristic market, like if it were like a hotel. Okay, well, to buy a property in Spain, we say again and again about it's important to choose an independent lawyer to represent you in buying a property. Obviously, to buy safe, to put some mind on the investment, in order to check absolutely everything from A to Z, really, from obviously about the property, about the conditions of the sales, the conditions of the payments, terms, and absolutely everything, to check if there are charges and encumbrances in Spain, we have a very safe security process in order to buy a property, but obviously if you do it correctly, you do it by step. Normally, and this is normal in general, when you buy a property in Spain, you do it through a estate agent. Could be done directly with the seller, no problem. But normally with an estate agent, where the seller in, I would say 95% of situations is the one who pays the fees of the owner. This is important because at the end you think that you are the client, but the client is really the seller who is going to be, the agent is going to be paid by the seller. At the end, you need to find like a trusted agent as well as an independent lawyer in order to choose a property that you want to depending on what you need, obviously, and the area and everything. And normally, whenever you choose a property, there is paid a deposit. Normally, it's a small deposit, like 2,000-3,000 euros, 5,000 euros at least. And then starts a situation where you need to make a due diligence. Your lawyer needs to make a due diligence about the sellers, the identification of the sellers, the property, and obviously any charges that may appear in the property. And obviously, you have to enter in a situation where you want to buy with a mortgage. And this is why we have today Daniel from Revicasa, because they also will be able to, in case that you need a surveyor in order to check the property, how is the condition of the property, and obviously it's also required sometimes by clients, and I can see that it's highly recommended in many cases in order to see that what are the conditions of a property. And this is, and my recommendation is highly recommended to be done before you pay the 10%. In Spain, normally you pay a small deposit, and then 2, 3, 4 weeks, I would say, depending on the scenario of the sale, it is signed a private contract to pay 10%. 10% is a lot of money. It could be 20,000 euros to 50,000 euros to more, depending on the price. So before that, all the due diligence needs to be done. I mean, to check the property registry, the cadastral identification, to check the planning about the property where the municipality is, if it's affected or not. I mean, everything, absolutely everything. And this is done by lawyers normally. And then once it's done at 10%, then it's planned in the contract when it's going to be completion in order to pay rest, if you involve buying with a mortgage, and then pay taxes, and everything is on that. That is when you buy like a resale property in the Valencia region, and then Michael will speak about Andalusia. You pay 10% transmission tax, and then you pay notary fees, registry fees, and lawyers' fees. Normally, think about around 12%, more or less 12% on the price that you are buying, added on the price. And
Pedro, sorry to interrupt you. They're saying they cannot hear very well. I don't know if you could turn up the volume, but I think it's more of a personal thing. But I don't know if everybody listens properly.
Well, I have to say that my microphone, for some reason, is not working today very well. So okay. If you think that is not listen up, let's give the Michael
turn it up.
Then I will try to amend it. Well,
okay.
Rapidly and briefly, for new properties, is obviously the due diligence is good, is important. You need to apply for guarantees of the payments that you do through the process of buying an off-plan property, for example. And as well, it's important to obviously to check the property that all the due diligence on the charges and compensate the seller and everything. And the taxes are the same, except that is 10% is value add tax, it's not remission tax. And in Valencia community, you pay 1.5% as well. And then you need to add the notary fees, the registry fees, and also the lawyers' fees. This is briefly and summarized in Valencia region. Then will be Michael will be said about. Will speak about the Andalusia. And briefly regarding the new decree that we have, and I think we spoke about. I think it's 2 weeks time. It's been changed, the decree about the touristic licenses, in order to from the 8th of August 2024 has been changed. Those one who had licenses before that is going to be extended 5 more years, so until the 8th of August 2029. And just to summarize, it will be not permitted more than 10 days. So if touristic license will be covered in 10 days or less. And the keys could not be delivered in a box that is located in a public way. It's mandatory also as well to have a 24-hour service telephone number. That is something that is extremely important. Those properties that has different areas of the properties, different properties with one cadastral number, this one has to be divided. It has a specific process to do it in a notary and then in the cadastral office. So, but it's something important to do because without that will be cancelled the license. And it will be forbidden, as it was before, about individualized and rent rooms, just rooms, will not be according to the touristic license. And well, at the end, you need to identify perfectly the property into the database of the Comunidad Valenciana, in this case in Valencia database, in order not to be cancelled. And important issue, whenever you're going to be transferred the property to another buyer, if you buy with a license or you are a seller with a license, and the buyer will have to transfer and make the change of this license. It's not automatic. It needs to be done again. Not with all the requirements, but with most of the requirements. Okay, and I think it's just to start, I think it's enough. Let's listen, Michael, about Andalusia, about resale and new properties, and then we go with Daniel.
Yeah.
Okay, over to you, Michael. Thank you.
Okay, so that's a fantastic explanation by Pedro. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Michael Davis. I'm a Spanish lawyer and I practice down in the Andalusia area. So it's difficult for me to go through the buying process without repeating myself over what Pedro has said. So basically concentrate on the differences. Here in Andalusia, if you buy a second-hand property, different respect up to the Valencia region is basically the tax that you pay. In Andalusia, luckily at the moment, we only pay, we have a flat rate of transfer tax of 7%. Instead of the 10% up in the Valencia region. So when Pedro says that all the taxes and fees on a second-hand property up in the Valencia region will come to around 12%, well, here in 12, 13, I'd say, in here down in Andalusia, will be around hovering around the 10% mark. The way we always explain to clients that are buying here in Andalusia, because we don't handle conveyances normally outside of Andalusia with the odd exception, is on a 200,000 euro property, you'll basically work out at 10% almost exactly with all the taxes and fees included. If you're buying a property over 200,000 euro, the percentage slowly goes down a little bit. And if you go buy a property that's less than 200,000 euro, the percentage goes up a little bit. That's because normally notary, registrars and solicitors have sort of minimum fees and things like that. For example, we do, and many notaries and registrars do as well. If you buy a brand new property or a property under construction, well, that will be new anyway, then like in the Valencia region, you don't pay transfer tax, you pay VAT, which in Andalusia will be the same as in the Valencia region. That will be 10%. But you also add a document tax like in Valencia region, with the only advantage that in Andalusia it's 1.2 versus the 1.5 in the Valencia region. So there's the conclusion regarding the comparison is that on a transfer second-hand property, there's basically a saving of 3% with everything else being the same. And on a new property, there's a saving of 0.3. In other words, conclusion, not enough, not enough to make you buy in one region or the other. A lot of people still think that in Andalusia, we've got a much more favorable inheritance tax regime than in the Valencia region. That's no longer the case because the Valencia region caught up with us in 2023. So you've still got the wealth tax, but in reality, from a taxation point of view, there's not that much difference in it. I don't know how long we've got, Ignacio, whether, because Pedro's explained the basics, whether you'd like me to sort of explain the basics of, from my own personal view,
yeah, if you could carry on.
Look out for. So basically, from my experience, I've been handling conveyancing for expats for about just under 30 years now, which makes me very old, but that's how it goes. So, so just to fill in certain gaps and not try and go through the whole thing again. I just want to say, basically, just my own experience to avoid pitfalls, things I'd recommend is one is we still come across clients that have chosen their lawyer to buy their property in Spain purely on the advice on the estate agent that's selling the property. Now, that's not a good thing to do. It doesn't necessarily guarantee that it's going to be a bad lawyer. No, not at all, because in our case, we're recommended quite often by different estate agents. What I'm saying is it's just not the right way to go about choosing the lawyer. You want someone that is 100% independent. So if there's lots of people recommending someone and you read him online, he's recommended by the British consulate, and you've got a friend that handled him, that has handled you, and the estate agent has recommended him, well then, hey, he's probably a good idea. Don't just simply think that this is a commodity. All lawyers are going to do exactly the same. I'll just go whoever is the cheapest. And if the agent's recommended this person, that's great. Because remember, you're paying your solicitor for the odd one out, for the case where there is a problem, so that he's got to be able to say no to a transaction. Okay. And that sometimes is difficult if the lawyer is dependent 100% or 90% of his work from one single agent. And you won't know whether that's the case or not if you've only been recommended by them. So that's just a bit of advice on choosing the lawyer. The actual process is being really explained by Pedro. An average closing time in Spain is anywhere between 1 and 3 months. Your lawyer is going to handle the purchase. You want to make sure that he does all the associated issues like opening the bank account, handling the power of attorney, requesting your NIE number, and also making Spanish wills. For many, many years, I've been handling probate, and probate we do handle all over Spain. And if there's one piece of advice I'd recommend all clients that buy properties in Spain is make sure you sign a Spanish will. It's going to save people a lot of it will save your family a lot of trouble in the future. So basically, and I'll finish. If there's just 3 recommendations from 30 years experience, 3 things that I'd always recommend expats do is 1, make sure that you spend time regarding the choice of your lawyer. Investigate this well. The second thing is if you're buying a property under construction, make sure, as Pedro mentioned before, that you get bank guarantees on all the stage payments. And number 3, what was number 3? I shouldn't have said 3 at the beginning. The 3 things, and what was the third one? Oh yes, and the third one, of course, is to always make a Spanish will. If all expats did these 3 things correctly, 99% of the problems that at least we see in our office would be avoided. That's it for me.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much for your advice of so many years already fighting with problems and saving a lot of money and issues and problems to clients. That I could credit it. Right, I'm going to pass on to Daniel. Daniel is the CEO of a surveyor's company. He will introduce himself, obviously, and what is the good part that adds value to the whole equation. When we are trying to buy a property in Spain, first thing you want to know is, well, if it's going to be all legal. 2, is my money protected? 3, is the property that I'm buying as good as it sounds? Or does it have any hidden problems, or at least something that somebody could tell me about it? In general case, if you're going to do an investment over 200,000 euros or whatever, I think we always recommend, if possible, to use an independent surveyor. Why? Because he will identify the problems, the issues, will make sure whether there is any things that go against land registry, cadastral reference, or even meters of the land, especially for them to measure, especially for them to identify whether you have underground heating is working, is not working, the air conditioning, the electricity. Not all surveyors do that, I must admit. When you go and apply for a mortgage, they will place you a valuer, but his only job, he's not the valuer that is looking after you. He's an independent valuer that only wants to give a value for the bank to make sure that that property is guaranteed, the equity is guaranteed. Now, bringing to the equation as part of the due diligence, bringing a surveyor. I know Michael used one in Andalusia. We use here several in Alicante. The good part of it is that he will make sure that what they told you it is, he will really match with as much as possible with reality. So we will do the due diligence, the surveyor will do the measurings and test on that, and then everything could move forward. I'll pass over to you, Danielle. You're a better one to explain what is the good value of having independent valuers or surveyors, and explain the difference about the bank values as well. Over to you.
Thank you, Ignacio. Well, like I said before, thank you for having me here. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, I'm the co-founder, the CEO for Revicasa. We're a property surveyor company. We started this business around a year and a half ago because we found a gap in the Spanish market. We've seen that in the US or Canada, or the UK or Nordic countries in Europe, around 8 or 9 out of 10 buyers, they are doing a property survey, which makes a lot of sense to know what are you putting your money in. So that's why we found out that here in Spain there are some independent surveyors who are doing these property surveys on a side of their actual job. They're mainly architects who have their projects, or they're doing independent appraisals. And then when someone like you guys, some lawyers are asking them to do property survey, they're coming to do it, but they don't have like the standards that we are meeting now, or our architects have independent training we are conducting ourselves. We are on the Internati, which is an association, which is an international association for home inspectors. And that's why we're getting a lot of training from them. And that's what we are conducting. That's how we're inducting our architects. It's not just, they're not just architects who have some experience on construction, which they all do, but they are also having a very good training, and we are using the latest technology available to find out any hidden defects or any deficiencies on the installations. So I was gonna say, like you were deferring like 3 important things before buying a property in Spain. The way we see the 3 more important pillars are first, to assess the legal situation of the property. So that's why you guys here, best lawyers, you can hire in Spain. And then you have to know the real value of the assets you are going to invest on. Here in Spain, if you want to get a mortgage, like you said, you need an appraisal, which is mandatory to have to get 80-90% out of the real value of the property. Even if you're buying without a mortgage, it would be good to have that appraisal to know the real value of the market. And then the third most important thing is to know the real condition of that property. That's why we are here, to assess that third party. How do we do it? First of all our technicians are registered architects. Like I said before, apart from the training, they are the only people qualified here in Spain to assess any structural issues or even to find hidden defects. Then the way we do it is with our own technology. We have developed our own app, so it's so much easier for us to assess all the situation, like to check the air conditioning, the isolation, the electrical installation, plumbing system, ventilation, all the structure of the house. And then what our clients are going to get is a comprehensive report, which includes pictures, comments, and most importantly, an estimation of any of the repairs that you may have to do if there are any deficiencies found on the property. So if you're doing this property survey before signing that reservation or the contract, the private contract, or you are signing a conditional private contract condition to this report, then you will have the power to negotiate or to see whether you are making the right investment or not. Because maybe you can find some issues on the property, but if you're not an expert, you may think that it's something that it's minor. It could be like 2, 3, 4,000 to do the repair, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's so much more. Or the other way around. Maybe you're thinking that you're finding a property with some cracks, and you're thinking that it's something structural, and it's not. It may be something just from the aesthetic of the walls. Then if you know that, you can buy the property with peace of mind. So that's why we are here to give you that security and that peace of mind when you're buying a property. Well, that's mainly what we do and how we can assist all the clients. And also, if you're required to do an appraisal, we always do the comparison between the money you're investing on a property versus the cost of an appraisal, which is around 300, 400, 500 euros, versus the cost of our condition report. And it's mainly the same. It's very similar to the appraisal cost. It always ranges from 300 to 500 euros, which is something very reasonable when you're investing on a property, which is usually over 200,000 or even more nowadays. Well, yeah, that's all I can say about our company and how we can bring value to the property process.
Okay, Daniel, thank you very much. If you could just put your email. I did share with you with the audience your website, Michael's website, and our link as well. Feel free to put your email in case somebody wants to interact with you. Some people are contacting us from different part of the country, but there is a good, interesting. We can start now with questions and answer. Pedro, Michael, and Danielle. Lindsay has a question, which I think we discussed last time, Pedro, myself. If you have already paid signed arras and the survey shows serious issues, can arras be refunded, or should the arras stay subject to survey? This is Pedro. I remember you discussing the other day.
Well, this is
do you want to start with that, and then we could share it with Michael and Danielle? Is the very last one 5:58? Over to you, Pedro.
Okay, let me just check. It's a very good question regarding. Obviously, someone has already paid arras, and in the arras is stated many, I would say, standard conditions, where at the end you are buying free of charges, free of encumbrances, no hidden defects. And obviously, even though, I mean, with these circumstances, obviously, if something happens after the arras, has to be said, has to be proved or said if whatever is happening on the property is sufficient in order to, it's subjective, but it's sufficient in order to say, well, this is a high argument in order to understand that it's a breach of contract. And for that reason, obviously, it's not needed to include any clause really on this. So if that is the case that the arras has already paid, and obviously during the arras and completion date appears hidden situation, also could be also after completion, after you have already paid all the money. Okay, but obviously it's something that appears there, needs to be not negotiated, but needs to be informed the seller. Obviously, take about the costs, made some negotiations. And I don't see a big problem, but what I say, I mean, this is my recommendation. Obviously, I like to know all that before making any big payment, any 10% payment. Why? Because it's a time in order to negotiate. It's a time to well, maybe not make any payment until this is subsanated. Maybe it's a situation where I can decide not to go ahead, so it's important to know before. And this is why I understand that if the surveyors are rapid and they do it obviously with independent principles and to do it correctly, and obviously something for me important to know before. Imagine that the heating is not correct, or it happens sometimes that client has bought a property and appears after completion at termites or humidity in the property, because right now it's summertime, it's not raining, but whenever it rains, appears something that we didn't know. It was, I mean, no one knew this. And some other situations where some things appear. So it's good to know, obviously before completion, but also if you could before act. But in general conditions and terms under the civil code, the Spanish civil code, obviously any buyer will buy properties free of charges, free of encumbrances, and obviously with not big defects, not big issues that obviously could end into a breach of contract, and have you as a buyer have the right to apply for breach of contract and apply back the money. I don't know, Michael, I mean, we've been dealing with this many times, but I understand that obviously the situation, as much as you know before, any payment is better, because then you don't have to claim the agent, you don't have to claim the seller. I mean, it's better to have, I recommend always to have money in our pocket, in the pocket of a client, before leaving the money, and we need to claim and claim and claim. I always recommend clients, okay, let's pay the deposit, 3,000, 5,000, it's not a big issue. And then we need to claim it is less money, but when things appear, then the discussion appears also, and the arguments appears. And sometimes, even though it's clear, then we need to claim, and this make times and stress clients.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. When the client's sort of already suspicious about the situation regarding, you know, something that may be wrong or something like that, what we normally do is we put into the contract, and sometimes the sellers won't agree, and therefore then we just can't go forward. We say that it's subject to the result of a positive result by our surveyor, blah blah blah. So then there's an objective way of deciding whether we can pull out or not, and we establish what happens, you know, depending on what the surveyor's report says. But of course, the surveyor can give a report that's not sort of categoric. There's nothing really bad, but it's just not as good as we expected. And then we can go into a grey area. And of course, in all cases, I would say that as Pedro said, you know, if you've paid a 10% deposit, there's no mention of anything, but then you decide you want to have a survey. Then you have a survey, and the surveyor says the situation is a disaster. I think basically the negotiation there is we will simply accept to take our deposit back. We won't claim double the deposit. If everything goes sour, we've got to claim double the deposit because they can't comply with the contract, and we'll all go to court and hopefully settle to get our deposit back. But that's all very complicated. So as Pedro says, the more we can do before handing over the money, the better it is, obviously. So perhaps even between, so an ideal situation would be after the reservation, so that we know the property is sort of fixed. We give ourselves a bit of extra time, and before the deposit contract signed, because then everyone sort of feels that for 5,000 euro, the seller doesn't want to tie his property down in litigation because someone's not happy with the survey. So it's less tempting for him to try and just pocket the 10% and things like that. And normally it creates less money, less friction with the handing it.
That's good. Danielle, how much time, I don't know if you mentioned, but how much time, if they decide to hire your services, how much time you think you could provide with a surveyor report?
Well, that's a very good question. We need usually 2 to 3 days in advance per reservation, which is something that you can do online or on our website. You can see our availability on the website and make the reservation. And then once the architect has gone to the property, it will take up to 20 to 48 working hours to get the report. It usually gets the report within 24 hours if it's from Monday to Thursday. If the survey is being conducted on a Friday afternoon, the report will be sent over probably on Monday. But it's,
so Daniel, so if let's say I found a property today, and then to do the reservation through the lawyer or through them direct, it will take probably 2 days, depending, for you to send some of your architects, engineers to go and inspect the site, yeah? And then you will need, let's give it or take, because there's always a weekend in the middle. So at least 48 hours, working days, or so we could be talking about quite quick. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. Ignacio, yeah, like within 4 to 5 days, you will get the report. Even if you didn't get a report, if you are able to assist the property survey, you can ask any questions to the architect who's conducting it. So usually the clients who are going to the property and are comparing the architect, they get a clear picture of the situation even before you get the report.
That's really, Michael Pedro gives a lot of good information to the lawyers, because obviously we don't visit physically, and they go quick and they could identify a lot of, and you can negotiate, because if you still like that property, that was Daniel was saying, you could still negotiate with the vendor saying, listen, I found this problem, now who pays that? But unfortunately, Michael Pedro, sometimes you've dealt with it when we receive clients that obviously we didn't deal with the conveyancing, and they have inherited pre-existing problems from the vendor, previous vendor, and now they're trying to sell, and they inherit all that problem, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
so this really avoids problem, I believe.
Yeah, another thing that I like the surveys for, we always recommend, surveys. We never keep clients against doing surveys because it's good for us as well. One of the things I like about surveys, especially when it's not in an apartment block or it's like a villa on its own, it helps me detect illegal constructions. In other words, somebody's built an extension, and I'm looking at, I'm looking at the search certificate, and I can see a square meterage, etc. We all know the Catastro has a square meters as well. It's not normally very exact. So I'm looking at the property register, I'm looking at the meters, and sometimes it doesn't describe room by room. It just describes on the ground floor, there's 112 square meters. On the top floor, there's 70 square meters. And then if the buyer who's seen the property, because hasn't got an eagle eye, he's not going to be able to detect the difference between 112 meters and 70, whatever meters. So the problem, so one of the advantages for me with the survey is normally the surveyor will go around and he will do a site map of the property. I don't know, Danielle, if you do that with your reports.
Yes, we do. We actually had this situation yesterday. We did a property survey on a house, semi-detached house. It was on Catastro like 130 square meters, and it had 2 or 3 floors. And the architect who went to the survey said to us, just the second floor, it's an extension on the third one as well, and the second and third one are over 150 square meters. That's how we found out that there was a discrepancy.
So those surveys are very useful for us, and we've come across quite a few over many years. It doesn't happen that often, but over the years we've come across it quite a few times where it's been the survey that's helped us realize, for example, that there's 2 extra bedrooms there and not on the title deed, not in the property register. And of course, then you could be in a situation where those just simply cannot be legalized because it's built on rustic land or whatever, or something that can be legalized. But then, of course, it's a negotiation with the seller. Sometimes it's an opportunity to discount the property and take it as it is, and we work out whether we can legalize it later. Or we don't. What we don't want is our client to end up buying this problem and then having to legalize it themselves before they sell it to the next party in the future. So I think for that, just for that on its own, when you're buying an individual villa somewhere, because on a flat it's easier to detect whether there's an extension or not, because they should all look the same, etc. But on individual villas, just for that, it's worth the survey is very often worth it.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think we're having some questions as well. The touristic license. Let me just brief, even though Kim, there is a webinar that we did last 2 weeks about the new law in Valencia. We'll just discuss whether in Andalusia there will be any, because every region has a different, obviously through the surveyor, we could ask as well to check certain bits and pieces on the touristic rent, because there is a lot of people that are willing to buy property, Michael Pedro, to invest and to rent. Let me tell you what the new decree in August stated while we were all on holidays. To keep it very simple, in Valencian community, if you're going to apply now, there is a presumption that if you're advertising the property under platforms, that's a touristic apartment, unless you will rent it out for more than 11 days. So people renting out property more than 11 days, you don't need a license. People renting in this community, Valenciana, right? Renting a property for less than 11 days, you must register the license within the registry of tourism. Okay, people doing the business, mixing, obviously, I find it difficult because you will have to report to the registry what days are going to be one type of rental, what days are a different type of rental. Okay, so the questions that we're having here, Pedro, Michael, as well, is about this license. If you sell the property nowadays, Pedro, correct me if I'm wrong, if they sell the property with an old touristic license, they will need to change the name of the license nowadays. And I think now with the new law, it only lasts 5 years. Is that correct, Pedro?
Those properties that had a license and it was registered before the 8th of August this year will be automatically, it's like extended. It's like, even though they maybe expired in 2 years' time or 3 years' time, it's extended, all of them, until the 8th of August 2029. If someone applies for license, let's say today, it will be for the 18th of September to 2029. It will be for 5 years, and then after 5 years renew. All of them, let me just show one thing that is important, probably we didn't say. I think I mentioned last time, because all these properties and this new decree that changes different laws has included an annex where appears all the conditions that the properties has to have whenever the renewal is going to come. So in the 8th of August 2029, when you had license before the 8th of August 2024 into the 8th of August 2029, you need to renew. So you need to comply some requirements about the property, and those ones in an annex. Let me just find it and see it. I think we spoke about that last time, Ignacio.
I just did share, Pedro, with the audience where they could check all the new regulation, which briefly I summarize in 1 minute. But obviously, you cannot rent out a property if you don't have habitation license or second occupation license. If I don't know if Danielle or their surveyors could provide help with that, but this is something that is required, not only to contact the town hall to see whether it's compatible with that area or not, but you need to submit a drawing from an architect and comply with different bits and pieces that is shown. And we had an hour webinar just about that topic. Well, obviously, you need to provide a minimum of quality. The reason for this law is to compete with hotels. They were not happy to have apartments with low quality or even renting rooms and competing with hotels. So therefore, they require certain minimum requirements. Pedro, yeah, you wanted to share something with the audience, yeah?
I want to show this new decree really that changed this law. And what I was saying is that this Annex 3, I think I answered to Kim properly in these cases. And those properties, whenever it's going to be renewed in the 8th of August 2029, needs to comply with the requirements. For example, just as an example, if the property has more than 5 floors, 4 floors, planta baja más 4, ground floor plus 4 floors, we have to have an elevator. And as we said before, about the 24 hours telephone and for example, hot water, for example, this is situations, connection to internet, or like a list of emergency telephones and meters. Some of them already was before, but some of them are being included in this situation. So all of those needs to comply with the whenever it's going to be renewed, and the properties needs to have some specifications, and the property has to have some issues. For example, an ironing,
fridge, yeah, fridge, yeah, iron, yeah.
All of that people has to have will have to be adapted in these cases.
Pedro, if you share what you were sharing at the moment, the interesting part of the law they don't allow, like in the UK or in London, or that you can have a box with a key, with a code to do it. I think you have to have personal reception. Is that correct? So they need to, I think there is part of Annex 3.
What the decree says is that the box do not have to be in a public way, do not have to be in a public outside in the street, for example, outside in the facade, and has to be now needs to be in a private way. So the key to enter in the room, many of them has right now a code. They give you a code and then you just enter the code and entry. But with the keys, is compulsory not to have it in a public way into a box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the bottom line here, and we had a lot of questions and a lot of interest, Michael, here, because they just changed it. In the old days, I don't know if you could share with us your experience in Andalusia, but here, this summer has been very hot on property as in Andalusia, and people were complaining about touristic apartments and not legal apartments. Now, is it a possibility for you to buy to let? Yes, of course. Now, do you need to have everything done by the book? Of course. Do you need to comply with the regulation to apply for the license? Yes, you do. In some areas, for example, in the center of Denia, I think they did suspend it because in the center there were too many. So now you cannot apply for it, even though your property will be completely legal. So you cannot grant it. You are on the outskirts. Now, but people, sometimes they were panicking, and I was saying, there is in the law, it says specifically, if you're renting out for more than 11 days, it's not considered, obviously you'll have to prove it, but it's not considered just because of that. So if you are using Booking or Airbnb, then just block in your property more than 11 days. And that's what is called the type of rental contract we were discussing. You have the short-term rental contract, the season rental contract, or the long-term rental contract. So what we call it the temporada, or just for 15 days when we go on holiday in the summertime. That is allowed. So you don't need to have a license for that, okay? So that's the difference. Now, the only bit that I discussed with Pedro that might be a bit more difficult is when you do, Pedro, mix the two business. Sometimes, I don't know, in the summertime, I only do touristic. In the winter, I do long term. You need to inform because otherwise the penalty is to deregister you from the registry, from the Consumers and Tourism Board. Okay, I don't know, Michael, do you have any hot topic in Andalusia about this, or it was only in our community?
No, here as well. We've got there's problems in certain sort of overheated areas like the centre of Seville, centre of Malaga, which is causing more problems. Our norms are slightly different, but they're to some extent they're sort of similar as well. I wanted to ask you, I see that over there in Valencia region, you mentioned that you cannot actually register without having a license of second occupation. I wanted to ask you, because that requirement sort of softened in Andalusia. In the Valencia region, can you actually sell a property without having a license of second occupation? In other words, can the buyer exonerate the seller from having the license of second occupation, or is it compulsory at the moment of sale, so everyone's always ends up having a license of second occupation?
Well, Pedro, correct me if I'm wrong, but the law establishes that you must apply for the second occupation license. Now, who pays that tax? This probably could be a fight because it doesn't say who, but you must apply for a second occupation. Now, in certain cases, for example, I could tell you in the city, to change the direct debits no longer want the second occupation license, Michael. However, if you're going to apply for touristic license now, you need to have a license, which means you already have an OK authorization from the town hall that everything complies. So what they're trying to do here, Michael, is that everything is being rented out is good quality or according to law. Yeah. They do not let you rent properties that they are not legal, and they don't let renting rooms as touristic. That's prohibited. So this is a big change. So they are trying to competition with hotels, and at least with a minimum of a standard of quality. That's the reading, Pedro, I do from the law. But obviously, I find fair enough, Michael, that they want the property to comply with that habitation license. Because let's say you have a local, right? And you didn't do the change of use, and you still have, in the old days, it was a local like our office, but legally, I mean, we tear it down, we change it with no license. You don't have a license and a permit to rent it out and put it on the platform. So I will need to apply for the habitation license, and obviously that you will never get it if it's a local unless you do the change of use. So
do they take a long time in the Valencia region to issue the license to second occupation, or does it go town hall by town hall sort of thing?
It goes town hall by town hall. Normally it doesn't take too much, but it's not great, Michael. It's not straight away. And sometimes it is declaración responsable, which you need to get that document and they accept it. So the architect goes, signs off, stamp it, and that's what is considered unless they do an inspection. So it goes town hall by town hall, Michael.
Okay.
Yeah, and for the licenses, he's been engaged some like an outsourcing public company in this way in order to put things moving rapidly, more rapid than it was before, in order to obtain the licenses before the renewals. So make this declaración responsable a lot faster. So it's gonna they see obviously
minimum
is a problem.
Declaración responsable probably, Pedro, is a minimum they're required.
Yeah. So that would be it will be an issue, but obviously it doesn't take too much time. I cannot tell you. I mean, because the compatibilidad urbanística, obviously this is the situation where it's made by this new law has changed a little bit, and then declaración responsable. But it takes, let's say, between 2 and 3 months for sure.
Yeah, I don't see much of an issue, but it's something that you really need to be focused on because it takes a little bit of time to get it. But Michael, we didn't have an issue. If the property is legal and everything is in order, at the end of the day, you're going to get it. Now, sometimes I find, Michael, the problem that some is chicken or egg or catch-22. People wants to buy a property and they want to make sure, and now the due diligence are quite important because, Michael, I want to buy this property, but I want to make sure that I could get a license. I'm sure that Danielle will probably have an extra work on there. And I don't know, Danielle, if you could provide this service to clients, because in the due diligence, they will require whether that's compatible with, otherwise they will not invest.
Yeah.
So,
yes, that's something we can do, and also the declaración responsable, that's something we can do as well. And I was gonna ask because it's very interesting to know about this new law. So if there's something I'm not sure of, so probably you guys know, if you were to buy a property either in the Valencian community or Andalusia, but you want to rent it out, do you need to get the registered license because you're going to rent it out for 3 days, 5 days, and then maybe some long term? Can you apply to the license and straight away start renting out, or do you need to wait to get the license?
Well, you can apply for a license, and if it's not used, will be cancelled. Will be like once you apply for and you don't start activity, it will be cancelled. And if you don't use it for 1 year, for example, will be also cancelled. And this is a license is in order to operate with that. Obviously, will be the situation where you will be able to use it, and sometimes just rent it like a temporary, like more 10 days. And then you need to inform. I think I click on I put a link here, obviously in order to suspend and then to put it active again, the license in order to this. It's a little bit mess, I have to say, on this, but it could happen that you rent it as a touristic license, and in some way, you just do it in a different way, like not like a long term, because if it happens, then the license will be cancelled in some way. But if it's a temporary, it will be able to be updated or suspend and then active again.
But Pedro, Danielle is saying, I guess if I understood correctly, you apply for that, for the license, and then you want to straight away start acting, correct? That's what you said.
It's like when you file declaración responsable on the city council to start the renovation, for example, Once you have filed that, you're allowed to start the renovation, the works. It's not like a major license for renovation. So I'm asking if it would work out the same way.
That's a good question, Pedro. I'm not sure because
in Andalusia it does. In Andalusia, that's how it works. In other words, at the moment, I don't know what's going to happen in these new heated up areas and things like that. But at the moment, up to now, you do your delegación responsable, you have all your documentation in order, you present to them this registration system that we've got in Andalusia, which has got a separate database than your one. And once you present it online, you get a number. And that's the number that the platforms like Idealista and all these people want to see. It's that registration, that entry number that they want to see on the advert. So here you can present it, and then of course they can later on inspect it to see that what you've said is true. Now, if you've said on the thing that you've got an air conditioning in every room, that the ceilings are over X amount of X height, etc., etc. So if later you don't comply, they can inspect you and fine you. But you can start rent. All the platforms let you rent in Andalusia if you've got that entry number.
That's right. But important also, I mean, I understood the question differently, but let me just remind on that. Sometimes they say, I'm going to apply for the license, and then maybe next year or maybe in 2 years' time, I will use it. Well, that will be cancelled.
Okay.
Okay, that is also because we have had some clients like that before this decree. And obviously now we remind in the case that, okay, you buy to let, this is an industry. At the end, this kind of decree, what I have done is like to elevate the requirements and put like more professional, this kind of industry. When someone buys to let, it has to be someone with fulfill the requirements. The requirements are obviously a lot better for the tenants, really, that use these kind of properties, and increase obviously the service, and probably decrease the offer, but will increase the services to the big demand that we're having, specifically in Spain.
Yeah.
Well, we have a few questions here. Sarkis is saying when the purchase is cash, so you're a cash buyer, does it take shorter, Michael, than 3 months? I mean, we could go straight on completion after the survey.
Yeah, in Andalusia, I don't know if it's the same up there. We could complete basically if everything is perfect and the money is ready to go. We could complete within 30 days. So the only thing that would probably fall short slightly would be the NIE number, because the appointments are not that quick. But you can actually complete without an NIE number and even obtain a provisional NIE number to pay the taxes. So you can actually complete within 30 days. Less than 30 days, it's very difficult because basically at the end of the day, we've got to organize the agent, at least do a reservation, even if we don't do a deposit and we go directly to title deed. We've got to organise the power of attorney. We've got to get a Spanish bank account open. We've got to, if we can, get the NIE number, so request that and then go and pick it up. And then organise the completion of the notary. They need 3 or 4 days for the searches. You need a week for the appointment. But you can realistically, and without any problem, if everything's in good order and the money's available, you can complete within 30 days. Less than that, I think, we'll be pushing it.
Michael, we have another question. I mean, probably is off the topic, but and I probably know the answer. What license do you need for property that is rented for events? So it's like a business. Obviously, like weddings and things. I'm sure they will have to apply for a license with it. She's meaning Henrietta in the Andalusia.
Yeah, there won't be anything simple about that kind of license. There'll be a lot to it. You've got a business. You'll set you up as a business. You got to have an opening. I don't know. There'll be a lot to it. Yeah.
That's right.
Right. Now, question, Gail. We want to rent to tourists for longer than 11 days. What sort of contract do they need to sign? Well, a temporary contract through your lawyer or through the estate agents that have enough knowledge to draw up proper contracts. Okay. And how much of a deposit we need to take? Whereas contrato de temporada is up to you, because the bylaws, national bylaws of short-term contract are national, and then you could establish deposit, any money, or you could agree on all the way in one lump sum with penalty clauses, etc., etc. So these contracts are pretty good protecting the landlord when it's short-term contract. When it's long-term rental contract, is a different applicable by law, and therefore the tenants might have more right to stay in the property, obviously, as long as they pay. But they could stay up to 5 years, even though you have a 1-year contract. They could stay up to 5. If you're a company with more than, I believe, 7 properties or 10 properties, then they could stay even if they pay up to 7. But that's out of the picture here. That's long-term rental contract, which doesn't really affect the touristic license. So buying a property in Spain is safe. Now more than ever, Pedro, due diligence, and probably Michael, if they really want to do business with touristic, obviously we need to make sure if you're really going to invest and buy a property for this purpose, more than ever you need a surveyor, more than ever you need your lawyer to check, because otherwise it's pointless, isn't it?
I have a little question about rentals for I'm not I know Ignacio, Bill, you're both tax experts, so this is why the question is for you. I read recently that non-residents, they're renting out their property, or I don't know if it's already in law or it's just about to be brought in. They're thinking about doing this away with something that has been terrible, which is the fact that people have to make declaration every 3 months of their of the rentals that they've been making. Has that gone?
Yeah, that's gone.
That's gone.
Now it's done once a year in January, and which is very good for, reduce the bureaucracy and the declaration.
Absolutely. So now we can present the non-resident the non-resident hypothetical income tax and the real income tax on the days rented all at the same time. Is that correct?
Yeah,
oh, fantastic.
Correct.
That's great. And since when has that been in force?
I think this January 2024.
Okay, great. That's great news. It was absolutely crazy before. People just with one property renting it out every now and again, having to have an accountant to file a return every 3 months. It was absolutely crazy.
That's right.
Great. That's good news.
Right. Michael, Pedro, any other interesting question you might think we miss? Obviously, they have your direct line.
Just there's one thing I saw, but it's slightly off topic. But this person needs help, and I was going to quickly answer his question. I think it was a 558 or something like that. I saw it before. It's definitely a 5 something. Oh yes, there's a question here. It says from it's the timestamp.
What time?
1750. It said someone's saying here from Madrid, is the Spanish will the same as a living trust? Now, absolutely not. But what this question makes me think is, first, is that they must be either English, American, Australian, or Canadian, because otherwise they wouldn't have that sort of question. Trusts in Spain don't exist. And the fact that you're asking me, they're not the same, they're completely different things. But the fact that you're asking me this means that you have not made a will in Spain, because if you had, you'd already know that they've got nothing to do, will and trust. So if you're relying on either a will or a living trust in the States, because this is probably someone from the States or from the UK or somewhere, they have these to later on use to wind up your Spanish estate, you're in for a big trouble. So regardless of the difference between one and the other, which there's no point in going in, what you need to do is make a Spanish will in relation to your Spanish assets, regardless of whether your assets in the UK, the US, etc., are being dealt with via a will or with a living trust, which are both viable options in those countries. But you need a separate Spanish will for Spain.
Right, thank you, Michael. Borislava just said, and she's in Casada, so probably we can see her, but she's got the 2 type of business, the winter long term and the probably short term. You need to look into it and discuss it with somebody, because now you need to register for the short term, less than 11 days, Borislava, okay? So long-term rental contract in Comunidad Valenciana, you're fine. You don't need to apply for a license. Short term, less than 11, you need, okay? And you need to update it. Yes, and this is the question from Jane. More than 11 days rental contract with an agent, yes. And then, Pedro, I'm not sure this one. They want to do more. I think they want to subcontract so they want to rent the property, put it into the very last one, the 638 question. They want to put it into a company. They say they're going to rent it out for more than 11 days. So I guess they're going to just put it into a company for the whole year. And the company is the one who's going to rent it out short term. My knowledge, when I read the law last week, I really think they need to comply with the touristic regulation anyway, even though you give it to a company, isn't it? You need to do exactly the same because it's the touristic meaning, isn't it?
Hmm.
Pedro, I think you missed your microphone is off.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What you say. I mean, obviously, when the rental is going to be less than 11 days, less than 10 days, it will be needed to have a touristic license. Will have to be applied to. I mean, this is why this law is being approved, but in order not to be able to let properties as a touristic license without touristic license in a community of owners, where obviously there are some limits. We haven't spoken about the community of owners, that sometimes they are increasing to the owners up to 20% the fees of the community fees. If they do it correctly, they are allowed to do that. And obviously they could also forbid, prepare and approve a forbidden situation for properties that shouldn't have a license, a touristic license, and they could do it, but they need a unanimity of the vote. So if you already are an owner, that will not happen, because obviously you will vote against that. But if the property is going to be rented less than 11 days, it will be, in my opinion, will be required for a touristic purpose. I'm talking about, obviously.
Very last and very quick. Again, because I don't think people are clear enough, and I encourage you to watch the webinar from last week, which you've got in the panel. And I will, because you could just watch 1 hour specific for this. But people are asking, can you have more than 11 days rental contract with, and then change it into short terms? Yeah, but you need to inform and report it. Okay, I think Jane asked this, and can I advertise in Airbnb contrato de temporada? Yes, as we said, you need to prove if they ever do an inspection, you only do more than 11 days. And you could still, you don't necessarily need a contract. You can have a contract for 11 days, probably is worth it, but probably you already rent out on Airbnb more than 11 because they're spending 1 month on holidays, etc., etc. And Garbarino is asking, he was saying, is it possible? Well, yeah, more than 11 days, no license. Okay, this got to be very clear. And Pedro did join, and I share with you here, if you could copy and paste the law for you to double check, and exclude touristic is being excluded more than 11 days. But be careful, okay? Be careful, because
just to finalize, I mean, they say, can we advertise in Airbnb in case of contrato? It's a presumption in case that you advert, and this is what it says the law, and this has not changed at all. If you advert a property into a touristic platform, in this case a digital platform, it is a presumption that it's a touristic license. Yeah, is it a touristic purpose, or it has to have a touristic license, where Airbnb will apply to you and will require you to do this in order to be advert. And it could happen, and this is my personal opinion, that while you are at the same time that you have the license and you offer this property with less than 11 days, you could have it also at the same time, more than 11 days, and that will not be in the use of a touristic license. And it's a presumption that if it's more than 11 days with no entry on this situation, but I think it could happen to do it more than 11 days and in a digital platform. But obviously, let's see what Airbnb is going to do, because I assume that the legal department will be right now studying perfectly this in Valencia community properties, but I personally think that that will be it's a good question. I still have some doubts on this.
But Pedro, clearly that excludes on the definition, even though there is a presumption, it really says that if you're renting out for more than 11 days, then I know there is a presumption, but more than 11 days, if you're able to prove you're doing long-term, that's the good thing probably here, Gabarino, is to have a contract. So if they ever do an inspection and you have a contract, you show it's more than 11 days, obviously they have no leg to stand on, even though you're using booking for more than 11 days. The bottom line, Pedro, of the law, and we'll just wrap up because we could be forever. The bottom line is to have the same quality and not compete unfairly with the hotels. I really think that. So as long as you have everything with correct, or you don't do exactly the same that they do, I think, and you're able to provide it with a contract will be good evidence to prove that is short term. You shouldn't have any problem, because otherwise the 11 days, it wouldn't make sense. Okay, right. Okay, Daniel, we're running out of time. Thank you. I'm sorry to keep you long here. Michael, thank you very much. Pedro, I'm going to pass you on to Juanfran, who's waiting, ready to go home and display here the video buying a property in Spain in a safe way. Thank you very much, guys. See you in 2 weeks, hopefully, talking about inheritance tax, Michael. So don't miss that one. Okay, Michael, Daniel, Pedro,
Thanks a
see you
lot.
soon. Over to you, Juanfran. Thank you.
Buying a property in Spain. There are many reasons to purchase a property in Spain. The climate, the food, the culture, or simply to enjoy life. If you already see yourself buying the house of your dreams in the Mediterranean, it is important to be cautious and follow a series of steps. First, prepare a budget and take into account all the possible expenses. Remember to add transfer tax or VAT to the sale price, as well as legal fees, notary fees, and land registry fees. And even if it was love at first sight, do not rush or sign anything. The most important thing, especially if you're not yet a Spanish resident, is to hire an independent lawyer, a specialist who speaks your language and solely defends your interests. Together, you can review the characteristics of the house, should it have pending charges, negotiate a mortgage with the banks, and you will always be up to date throughout the whole process. But most importantly, fall in love with your property and do things by the book. Your new life starts there. Pellicer and Heredia, international lawyers.